Welcome to the Geek podcast, where it's a snow day. Here it is. Anyway, I'm Void, and I'm here with my co-host, Beej.
And it's not snowing in Alabama.
Yeah, no,
Ever.
It snows here a lot, but I was telling you this before the podcast. We don't actually get snow days in Minnesota a whole lot because we have the infrastructure to deal with it. So the fact that my kid's school got canceled today and I'm home, which, hey, I'll take the extra day, whatever. I'll use a day of PTO and make a long weekend out of it. But it's just insane because my whole K through 12, I think I had like 2 snow days, maybe, in all of that time.
And that's just crazy to me because, like, down here without the infrastructure for it, we get snow days all the time. Like, they will take it at the threat just to be able to use those days because they're built into the calendar.
Yeah, and I mean, we had a day like last week that we got like 6 to 8 inches of snow, and they're like, yeah, whatever. I mean, we just kind of go on with our day because, again, we have the infrastructure. Anyway, sorry, that's a tangent because it's very rare to have a snow day in Minnesota, and I'm kind of enjoying it. So we're recording early, which is pretty cool. So today we want to talk about game beginnings, and there was this article from Rock Paper Shotgun that kind of got me thinking about this, and it was called Let Us Play. And it was basically just talking about how so many games these days have these long intros before you actually get to the meat of the game. So that's kind of what we want to talk about. And I don't think it's a super long topic, but I did want to bring it up and just talk it through with you.
Yeah, and this is something that I've actually thought of that when you showed me this article, I was like, oh my goodness, yes, I've been complaining about this to myself for the last couple of months, at least since Christmas, because I get really frustrated when I have a limited amount of time and I want to start a new game and my time is completely taken up by sitting and watching an intro where it's not even an interactive tutorial. It is just me sitting there and they won't let me skip any of these cutscenes or just scrolling text, just anything. And I can't play the game when I want to. And it's really frustrating for me.
Yeah, well, once I started thinking about it, I think there's kind of 2 categories here. And one is like the never-ending tutorial, which is its own kind of horrible intro. And then there's the other one that's just this big exposition dump that you just have to wait through. And they're both bad in their own unique ways. You know what I mean?
Yeah, where like I see in yours, just to skip ahead just to talk about this, like the Kingdom Hearts series is really bad about those interactive tutorials.
It's so
where you
bad.
Can't get into the meat of the game for a while because you have to learn how to swing your sword, which one of my favorite things about Birth by Sleep was because you go through the game 3 times, it lets you skip that particular part if you've already played through at least one of the other storylines. So I like that part about it, where it makes it better because of the structure of the game itself.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I haven't been able to get back into Kingdom Hearts when I've tried to go back to it. Every time I pick up any of those games, it has such a long tutorial that I never even finish because I'm just like, okay, I didn't need any of this, and now I'm like half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour in, and it's still trying to teach me the basics, and I'm just so bored at that point. And I mean,
Kingdom Hearts 2 is really bad about that.
I would say all of the Kingdom Hearts series is bad at that. But even games that I love, like I'm not afraid to say that some of them fall into this category. Like Persona 5 is really bad in both of these ways. Not only is it super exposition heavy, it also has gameplay mechanics and tutorials that stretch out for a really long time. It's not as bad as Persona 4, which again is still probably one of my favorite games of all time. Persona 4, I think, is legitimately like multiple hours at the beginning where all it is hitting the X button to like get through the story.
Yep. And you don't even get into battles until even further than that when you start getting to control your character, where you have to go through a lot more of the story before you get to the true gameplay mechanics.
Yeah, and at least 5 is better about that part. 5 gets you into battle and kind of gets you... It onboards you better, even though it is still kind of like a long, slow ramp up. But 5 is better than 4 in that regard. But I mean, so I was thinking about the games that fall into these categories, and actually... the exposition dump, I feel like some of the games most guilty of it are the biggest budget AAA games because they really want to show you all the effort they put into their world and their cutscenes.
Yeah.
And it's like every time I play a Call of Duty game, it feels like that at the beginning. Like, let me just get into it. Let me just play a little bit. Even Final Fantasy 15, which you and I both thought was fantastic. Like, we loved that game.
Yeah.
It has a long intro that's just like, okay, let's talk about the car and we're moving and where are we coming from. And it doesn't really get you into it very fast, even though I love that game. It has a slow intro.
And And I like part of that intro. I really like the Stand By Me part where the music is playing and they're driving, and it just seems like everything around that felt extraneous, because for me, that part of it was emotional, and I could see why they do it given the themes of the game. But the way it starts out with you kind of have a fight and you kind of don't, and you're watching it, and then you're right, it's way too long. And when I started the mobile version of it, it felt like even longer to me because I'd already played it and seen it, and it was such a scene for scene recreation that it felt just way too long, especially for a mobile game.
Yeah, that one was bad. And then you had to do the weird download thing after you finish the intro before you even do gameplay. It was not a good experience. Well, and like no. I was thinking too of I was trying to think like last fall, what games didn't click with me that a lot of other people were playing that were more bigger budget ones, and Prey came to mind because I've heard people gush over Prey, but I couldn't get past the first hour because I was so bored. And I did get to the gameplay, but it's like, I think there was a good half hour, maybe 45 minutes of just kind of like leading up to the gameplay. And that really soured my experience because I just wasn't invested in the world. And some of these things are kind of different when you come back to them. If you're replaying a game that you love that has a long, drawn-out intro, you kind of enjoy it a lot more the second time because you're already invested. It's that first time where you're like, come on, just get there, give me something to latch onto, you know?
And I didn't feel that way about Prey. And it may have been because I was in such a mindset of wanting to play it that I was like, okay, let me see what this world is, because that was specifically what I was looking for at the time. And I never thought it was overly long because it was interactive in a way that it was, because of the nature of those BioShock, System Shock, Prey games, where you were interacting with the world and learning about it at the same time, where I was moving around and kind of exploring. So I see exactly what you're talking about. It is long before you really get into the gameplay of it, but it was kind of a leading through it rather than having to just sit and do it.
Yeah. Well, and one of the other ones that I think is probably worth mentioning for me is Zelda. Just the whole... Yeah, I know, right? Like, this was when I went back and I tried to play through the Zelda games again, I realized how bad the 3D Zelda games in particular are about tutorials until Breath of the Wild.
Man.
And maybe that's why I like Breath of the Wild so much, is that it just lets you go. But all of the earlier 3D ones are like never-ending tutorials, and it just takes forever to get into any part of the game that's actually interesting. So I bounced off of them one after another. And some are more guilty of it. Right. Some of them are a lot more guilty of it than other ones.
I could handle Ocarina of Time the first time that I played it. It's still very long now. And then Wind Waker, I think, is the second worst of it because I don't like the island area that you start out on, and getting off of it and into the main part of the game without just having to run around and like wake up grandma or something. I was really like, oh my God, keep on going. But Twilight Princess is by far the worst. Twilight Princess takes forever, and I've never really gotten past. I mean, I've talked to you about the monkey dungeon before, but where I don't like the monkey dungeon, but it's that entire section leading up to that as well. It never feels like gameplay. It feels like an extended tutorial that has no bearing on anything else, really. It's just, I don't know. I hate the opening of Twilight Princess more than any of the other Zelda games.
No, I agree with you. Twilight Princess is the worst, and then the second worst, I would argue, is probably Skyward Sword. But I think
I haven't played it.
Your mileage may vary on that one. Oh, if you had played it, I think you would agree with me. Skyward Sword is really, really bad in that regard.
Yeah, that was one that I avoided specifically because of the motion controls that I heard were in it, that I wanted to play it, but when I saw that it was trying to do one-to-one motion on the Wii with the Motion Plus, I just watched a couple of videos of it and Let's Play and haven't even gone back.
Yeah, you had a couple other ones in here too that you wanted to hit on, right?
Yeah, like over Christmas break, I gameflied Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle, and it was so long that I just wanted to try it. And it was one of them that you couldn't skip. It's a turn-based strategy game where your Mario characters mixed with Rabbids, and I don't care about the story, but they had an unskippable story cinematic that was about 5 or 10 minutes long. It may have been longer than that, before it even let you in. Then there was another one after you walked a few steps, and I just sat there and I was like, this is not going to be a game for me. And I kept trying to do everything I could to skip it, and it just would not skip. And it put such a bad taste in my mouth that I didn't really like the game anyway, that Jennifer and I tried it on multiplayer and single player, and it just didn't click. But part of it was that I didn't even want to give it a shot because it was so overly produced at the beginning that they tried to make it interesting and tried to explain the reason that they were doing this mashup. And no one cares. No one cares about why you're doing this mashup. Just give Mario his gun, put some weird faces on the princess and Luigi, and let's just let us play the game. You don't have to explain that away.
No, I agree. That was not a good intro for that game. Well, and you have Monster Hunter World here too, which is Monster Hunter World, it caught me up on the character creator. And maybe that's something worth mentioning, is that like I actually hate character creators because they happen before any of the gameplay. And they can take hours of time if you actually want to get into it. I'm one of those people who will actually, a lot of the time, I will just take the default because I want to get into the game. And I know that's like heresy to some people, but I want to get into the world and get into the game and experience it. I don't want to spend an hour, 2 hours of my time tweaking my character. And a lot of the time I'll spend like 5 minutes making my character and I'll just be like, whatever, broad strokes, that's good enough, and move on with my time. But besides that, I didn't actually mind Monster Hunter World's intro.
It really bugged me because I don't like character creation any more than you do. I actually may like it less than you do because I was actually commenting on a blog this morning, BioBreak with Sip. He had posted that Sea of Thieves didn't let you have any kind of sliders, like they're bragging about how it's just randomized character creation. And I don't care about that because usually I click randomize until I see one that looks cool, and then I basically just change the hair color, maybe eye color or something like that, and generally even that is just extraneous for me. And I hated it in Monster Hunter World. I hated this intro because A, I didn't know anything about the world. B, I didn't care anything about the world. And they're talking about, like, they're on this ship, they're doing everything, and they have this almost, I don't even know what the correct term is, but it's kind of overwritten, stereotypical mercenaries on a ship getting to know each other, and then there's that formulaic, oh, and this is what you look like, I didn't recognize you, and then you get into the character creator, and I'm just like, just let me have done this first, where it just getting to the actual world felt like it took forever. And then with the event that leads into the island, it felt like I don't like those kinds of events. I want to just start the game and then have the event like go on after being able to move my character around some. I don't know why. Just for some reason that one just hit me wrong.
That's funny. I felt like the intro was super long when I played through it too, and a lot of that might have been the character creator and like the overwriting, overacting like you're talking about. But then when my daughter started playing the game after I had finished it, I watched her do the intro process. And if you cut out that character creation, which honestly, that's where a lot of the time sink can happen. If you just look at the intro, it's only like 10 minutes from like start until you get to controlling your character. It's not horrible, but I felt like it was a lot longer when I did it too, which is probably what you're feeling.
Yeah, it is, because I feel like getting to the point where I got to the town specifically really took forever. And I mean, when you get to the island or the new world or whatever it is, I want to say it's an island all the time, but getting to that, and then once I got to the town, I didn't feel like I actually got into the game until after you have to follow the NPC around town. I hate it when a game makes me follow an NPC around town to show me where everything is, because I can run around town. I can talk to all of the NPCs. I've played video games before. You don't have to tell me, and this is your room, and here's where you buy food. Oh, here's where you can make your armor. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. It's called a smith. That's kind of normal, where it really, like, that felt almost as trudging to me as anything else in a game is, where that's just a kind of a nitpick of mine, though, where I have to follow this really slow NPC walking and to teach you how to run, too. Like, they're like, and now we can run. And it's like, hold this button. I'm like, good, this is the worst.
Well, a lot of like JRPGs, I think, fall into the trap of like really slow. They have to introduce you to everything because they're afraid you're going to miss a system. And Monster Hunter World isn't a JRPG, but there are some elements of having too complex of a system, so they really have to hold your hand. And I think that's kind of having an effect. But yeah, I mean, I made a note here that like a lot, as much as I like JRPGs, a lot of them fall into the trap of having these super long intros. And you called out another Final Fantasy also, didn't you?
Final Fantasy 12. Yeah, Final Fantasy 12 feels like it's super long. That both times, I've started it, I think, 3 times. And I remember the last 2. I don't remember the very first time I loaded it up, but when it was brand new. But the last 2 times I've tried to go back and play it, it felt super long, but as far as an intro goes, because they were trying to set up so much in Ivalice, and there was this narrator that I was talking about back when we did our Final Fantasy episodes that was this very high fantasy narration style, and that made it feel, if it actually is that long, made it feel very long until I got into the gameplay and was introduced to Vaughn and some of the other characters. And I don't know if Zodiac Age is any better about that, because they changed so many like systems. I wasn't sure how getting into the newer version of it, if it got in any quicker, or if you could skip through some of that if you wanted to. But I know the PS2 version I couldn't.
Yeah, I mean, it has a prologue that's pretty quick paced, but then after you get beyond that prologue, and I don't know about the Zodiac Age, I'm just talking about Final Fantasy 12 in general. I like that prologue section because it kind of gets you into it right away. But then as soon as you pull out from that prologue and you get to the actual main characters and stuff, it slows so much down. Yeah. I totally agree with you there.
So, and then I think it was Iconoclast that I'd played recently. I actually did a Steam return on this one because I wanted to play it. It looked really cool. You sent me a message about it. And I know I talked about it in my Geekery one week where I was like, I just don't want to use this wrench so much. And I know it's going to get better. But part of the reason that I didn't push on through it was because the gameplay would stop and they were trying to have like entire cutscenes worth of story in it. And that broke up the platforming, this kind of fast-paced jumping and shooting, unlocking puzzles platforming, where with these long story breaks that were not voiced and you just had to go through all of these kind of old school, like it's trying to be, these old school dialogue bubbles and hit the button every time. And it didn't really have any lead up to them. It didn't really, like, they felt completely, I don't even want to say unearned. They just felt like placeholders still. And at that point in the game, I just like, okay, if this is where the game is going, count me out, and went and got my Steam refund.
Yeah,
it may have gotten better after that for as far as those, but with talking about the beginning of it, it didn't let me play, and I just felt like that's not a good introduction to the game if it continues this way.
Yeah. So to not end on a down note, let's talk a little bit about like what we do like, what we are looking forward to, or what we are looking for.
Right.
So, I mean, I think we don't actually mind an intro as long as it's short, it's to the point, and it gets you into the game. And then sometimes it's nice to have zero intro and just be thrown into the gameplay.
Yep.
So I didn't actually like think through the section and write a bunch of examples, but off the top of my head, like arcade style games are really, really good about this. Even something like Super Hot, where it just like throws you in it and you're just like, you just start and you're kind of in the game. But everything that's kind of arcadey, a lot of iPhone and like mobile games,
right.
Anything in that vein, because it's literally just the gameplay. But beyond that, you had written down BioShock, which I think that is a really good example of like a AAA version of doing this well.
Yeah, and it's and it maybe I haven't played the first one in a very long time, but that's the one I'm thinking of, where what I remember about it is there's a very quick sequence where you're in an airplane, you crash, then you're in the water, and you go into this lighthouse, you go up the stairs, there's all of this stuff, you go in, you go down the stairs, and the entire time that you're moving, it's giving you the story that you need. It's giving you the introduction to the characters and the abilities and the world, but you are from the very beginning actively moving through it as opposed to watching it. And for me, that changed a lot as how I was immersed in the world. I remember back in the day, one of the first games that did it, I think, was Doom 3, that I was just enamored by this because it was one of those first games where they wanted to tell the story as you moved through instead of using cutscenes. And you would pick up these audio journals. You would pick up the logs by the other Space Marines screens when the demons had come through, and you listened to the story that was going on as you killed the monsters sometimes. And BioShock really took that to the next level, I think. And I loved how they were introduced like that, because you really do get thrown in immediately, but it's not an overwhelming getting thrown in where you're going to die immediately. It's getting thrown in. We're like, okay, I'm in this world. Now let's do this.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good example to end on too, is just do that. Give us more control out of the beginning. And even when you do have an intro, make it shorter. Because I think the whole time from like when you start the game until you have like control and you're actively doing stuff in BioShock is very, very minimal. It's super short. Cool. Okay, well, that's probably for the main topic. Let's talk about our network. I don't know what anybody's episode is this week because it's a snow day and we're recording super early for us this week. But check out Tea Time with Katie and Chelsea. They always have cool topics. Geekitude with Joe Hogan. He always has good interviews and good topics. And then the Comic Box with Rob. He usually talks comics. He's been talking Black Panther lately. I don't know what he's doing this week. I don't know what anyone's doing this week, but I will listen when they come out and I will find out. That's time for a weekly Geekery, I suppose. You don't have a whole lot, right? So why don't you go first?
I don't have a whole lot. This week, my wife and I had our 10-year anniversary of our first date. And so we went out and we did the whole really nerdy, geeky thing of a little sappy thing of recreating our first date, where what we had done, because we're both like not good at dating, and like we went to Olive Garden, then we went and walked around a bookstore, and then we went and saw a movie because we were so nervous and just kind of being like, with each other. And so we went and did that again. And we went around the bookstore, and it was super fun just seeing all of these things. And she got really excited because they had a Mrs. Incredible Funko rock candy figure that just looks awesome. And so I've never really liked any of those. And so she was like gasped, like, ah! And like I was like, what is it? And she like, it was this Mrs. Incredible. She still like, it's Elastigirl, and Jennifer's like, oh, they put Mrs. Incredible on it. But we did that, and then we went and saw Game Night. And I wanted to really talk about Game Night because this is one of those really silly movies that turned out to be really funny and really good to see. That it's not meaningful cinema at all, but it's just fun to watch. That pretty much everything about it is hilarious. That if you like, I don't know, have you ever seen the movie Date Night with Tina Fey and Steve Carell? That's one of our favorite movies because it is just pure fluff that is fun to watch, where and that's what Game Night is too, where we really liked it with this couple who is like ultra competitive, and they host a lot of game nights with their friends, and it's just good. Like somebody does a murder mystery and there's an actual kidnapping, and that's all in the trailer, so it's really cool. And then so the night was fun like that. On our first date, we actually got into an argument, one of those nerd arguments of who would win in a fight, Batman or Superman, and so we didn't do that this time. So it kind of we avoided that, and because I like Superman a lot more than I used to, and I'm kind of tired of Batman. So and somebody's going to skewer me online because it's saying that. And we've been watching Queer Eye. The new one on Netflix. It's really good. Like I didn't watch the original one, but I really, really like this new one. We've got a couple episodes in, and I like reality shows that are about people and positivity, and that's what this is. That this is not one of those reality shows where you like everybody's yelling at each other. It's like these 5 people who want to come in and they're helping somebody, and everybody's just friends, and it is just uplifting, and I love that part of it. Like you know how much I love positive television, so yeah. I really like this because it's handled in such a way. It's not trying to get across any kind of politicized message or anything at all. It's just like, let's make these people's lives better. And so that's all it is. And I love that about it. And then we found, did you ever watch The Soup on E?
No, I have no idea what that is.
Okay, it is a clip show where Joel McHale was the host for a long time. Like it was Talk Soup for a while, then it was The Soup, and then they changed hosts. But the one I know and I started watching was with Joel McHale, and it was taking the most absurd clips from television that week and showing them, and then making jokes about them. And like there are some really funny things that you would miss on TV and called out of context that are just hilarious. And so there's a new one on Netflix. It's a Netflix show called The Joel McHale Show with Joel McHale, and it's just the soup. That's all it is. It is the exact same show, but it's a Netflix original. And so Jennifer and I have started watching it, and it is exactly the soup. If you watched it, then y'all should watch The Joel McHale Show. The Joel McHale Show with Joel McHale. It's very hard to say, and we just call it the soup. But it's really good, and we're really excited that Jessica Jones is coming out this week. It comes out, I think, on Wednesday, maybe, but we're super excited that season 2 is coming out, and we want to rewatch season 1 before it, so we'll get to it, but I doubt we'll watch it immediately. But I am super excited. I'm geeking out about it coming out. I just don't know when I'm going to be able to get to it.
Sweet.
So
cool.
That's pretty much my week. I did finish up the Words of Radiance, so I'm really excited about that. It really was like a whole new book, especially as I went to the end of it and started Oathbringer, the Brandon Sanderson books. And I know I've been texting you about it, and this is one that I can't stop reading. That because I'm reading on a Kindle on my phone, it is every like free moment that I have, I've got my Kindle app open, reading part of it because I'm completely enamored by it so far. So I'm very happy with where it's going.
That means we can talk Words of Radiance or Oathbringer soon, which is going to be good.
Soon.
I'm glad.
Soon.
Cool. I did a bunch this week. Some of this I might have to high level for time, but I don't think I've ever mentioned, like, I'm slowly moving towards a smart house, but very, very slowly, because
I knew that, but I don't know if other people knew that.
Okay, because the technology is kind of there, but it's not all the way there yet. Have you done anything with smart home stuff?
No, that is something I care zero about, that I just don't feel the need or desire for it, where it's not even it's not that I think they're bad, it's that I just like,
So, okay, I kind of felt the same way. So I waited for the technology to get better. And then the one thing that we kept running into was like the lights in our living room were really annoying because we wanted, usually if we're in the living room, we want like all of the lights on because of we have a big open space, right? So like our living room, our kitchen, our dining room are basically like one big open area. We have, you know, a house with just that open floor space plan type of thing because that's what we like. I mean, that's what we wanted in a house, and it's great. But the thing is, like, you kind of need more lights on when you're in an area just to light it up. Otherwise, it feels dark. So, you know, we would have to go and turn on this one that's above my desk. We'd have to go turn on this new one that we have in the corner, and then we had like one on a side table. So I've slowly been switching those over to smart outlets instead of smart bulbs, because smart bulbs there's a lot of options you can do with them, but they're super expensive. And when I looked at the options, I was like, when would I ever want to turn my lights red or like dim them down to half power? Like, I just don't need that. I either want the light on or off. And that was like the little bit of functionality that I was looking for. So this is the week that I finally finished. Like, I did one light and we tried it and we kind of liked it. And then I did two lights and I figured out how to group them. And then I was like, okay, let's do all three of the main lights we use. So this week was finally like finishing that off. So our whole living room is like smart lights now, and we love it. We love to be able to just like call out to the, well, if I say it, it's going to trigger a bunch of people. It's the Amazon thing that's a smart home. And just tell it which light we want on, or you can say living room on and they'll all flip on or they'll all flip off. So that's huge. I mean, the other thing is too, you can like leave them on, and then as you're going to like walk up the stairs for the night, you can just call back and be like living room off, and it'll just shut everything down for you. So I like it a lot.
And I've thought about getting some of the smart light bulbs, but for a completely different reason, because of doing the live streaming and video stuff for work. I've thought about getting them because I want colored lights behind me as highlights. One of my coworkers has those for all of his, and they look fantastic the way that he has his office set up. So I would love to have like a low blue light or low green light or something as actual highlights around behind me, where it's like the Philips Hue, I think, is the one that he uses, but they're super expensive. So I don't want to pay for that set.
No, the bulbs are really expensive. And then one of the other things that's annoying once I researched it is that a lot of those smart lights, if you're getting the bulb instead of the switch, because I went with all switches because I could hook them directly into Amazon's ecosystem. A lot of the like bulbs themselves, you have to have a hub somewhere in your house that communicates with them and acts as a bridge in between systems, and it just gets messy and stupid. And I don't know. Like I said, the technology's not quite all there yet, but for just having an outlet it's working great. Just turn
awesome
a set of lights all on and off together at the same time without ever having to touch them. It's been cool. So I just wanted to bring that up, even though that's been kind of like in the background for the last month or so as I've been playing with it. I also did Gloomhaven, finally. It's fun. It's really fun, but I haven't played enough of Gloomhaven to actually weigh in on the game yet. Like, we did one full round, my daughter and I.
Okay.
So what I wanted to talk about was I got the organization system, right? Like the inserts for it. And I took like an hour and a half to assemble the inserts one day. They're made of like wood. And then my daughter and I took probably 2 hours together to punch out every single piece of punch board and figure out where it goes in the organization system. And it was like 3 hours of work so that every time we play Gloomhaven now, it's way less setup. Like, we can set up fast in comparison.
Okay.
So we played the first round of the first game, and we both liked it a lot. It was just that we're still getting our head around the rules. So it was a lot of, okay, well, hang on, let me check the rule book, that kind of thing. You know, that usually happens for the first session or two. So I probably need 3 or 4 sessions total before I can weigh in on the game itself. But my initial impressions are that I really like it. I'm really happy with the insert that we bought and the storage system that we landed on. And my daughter and I are enjoying it. It's a really fun game that we're playing together so far. So I'll come back around to it once I have more actual gameplay thoughts.
Yeah, that's actually one of the reasons that I don't get a lot into board games, and it's partly, you know, we've talked about how there's not a group around here that I can really game with, but part of it's also the organization that comes with it, the setup time, and then the rules that so many board games have so many different rules that you have to constantly check that that's one of the reasons I like video games so much, is that kind of thing is handled for you, that those kinds of really, really complicated board games like Gloomhaven don't appeal to me to learn those kinds of just completely intricate systems. And you're a systems guy, so I totally understand that.
No, I hate reading rule books, actually. It sucks.
Really?
That's my least favorite part of the entire hobby. I mean, the main thing that's made a difference in the last, 3 years here is that major board game publishers are finally learning to just make YouTube videos to explain the rules. So
yeah,
I don't read rule books anymore. I watch the 20-minute... Well, this is a super intricate game, so there's like a 20-minute video to teach you the rules. A lot of other games that I've picked up are like 5-minute videos, start to finish.
Okay.
They're really, really quick. And then I just use the rule book as a reference. So it's like, I have the broad strokes. I understand most of it. It's once you get into the nitty-gritty of, wait, how many things do we start with again? Or what happens when I do this one thing? You know, then the rule book becomes a quick reference. But I never try to learn a board game out of a rule book anymore, because that way it sucks. It's not fun.
Yeah, it's really not.
Yeah. I finished Star Trek Discovery Season 1, and it was all right. It was... I went through, I really liked it, and then it changed, and I thought it was okay, and then there were some cool episodes in the middle that got me excited, and then some of the things they did jumped the shark, and that lasted for, way too long, and then it kind of came back around at the end, and I don't know how I feel about it. I think I feel pretty much like it was all right, and I would probably give Season 2 a second shot, but it's not something that I want everybody to go out and watch because it gets amazing. You know, it's not that kind of show. It's just oh, I watched it. I'm kind of glad I watched it. It was all right. I feel like I would have enjoyed it a lot more if they had just released it all at once like Netflix does. The fact that I had to keep remembering to go back and get more episodes and watch them, that actually dramatically affected how much I liked this show, because I couldn't binge it. And when you go out of your way to watch an episode 1 week and you only have one new episode and it's not a good one, that's a horrible feeling. So that would happen, and then I wouldn't watch for a couple weeks, and then I would have 3 or 4 to watch, and I would enjoy that a lot more. So that's kind of what I ended up doing, is I would just wait, and then I would watch them as a group. But in the end, I mean, it's all right. I hope they do something more interesting with Season 2 if they get a Season 2. I think it got renewed. Do you have any idea?
I don't know. I haven't really kept up with anything about it other than just general impressions when I see people talking a little bit about it online, that I haven't watched it, and this is one that I still haven't cared enough to really watch and pick up at all. So eventually I'll do what you said and just binge it now that Season 1 is over, whenever I get into a Star Trek mood.
Yeah, just whenever you get into the mood, don't go out of your way to... I mean, I guess that's the way I feel. Don't go out of your way to watch this one, but if you get around to it, it's all right.
Yeah.
I just wanted to mention it because I finally finished it, and I know I've talked about it a bunch on the podcast. So I tried a bunch of games this week. One was called Deep Rock Galactic. Have you seen this game at all?
Not seen any about it at all.
Okay. It's a co-op space dwarf mining combat game. And
sounds super weird.
it is weird, but it was fun. But it is very, very early access. So you're a space dwarf. There's 4 classes, and all of them have like some kind of mining, like a pickaxe thing. But then they all have different weapons and different loadouts, basically. There's interesting mechanics around light. Like there's not always light. So you have flares that recharge over time, and you can throw them. So you're basically trying to dig down into a cave system until you get enough of the mineral that you need. And you have this little mechanical spider crawly thing that follows you, and you can like dump them in there. So it's essentially like your futuristic minecart. But as you're trying to mine things, these aliens come out and attack you. And they're kind of bug aliens. They're kind of Starship Troopery. There's like different traversal mechanics too. So the one guy that I was playing mostly, he could like shoot not a grappling hook, but almost like a line, like a kind of grappling hook, but then there would be like a minecart attached to it, and you could ride it up or ride it down between big gaps or over big gaps. And so, yeah, it was just doing cool things with like co-op, doing cool things with like light as a mechanic, doing interesting things with traversal and mission objectives, but it is extremely early access. Like, the servers kept crashing, my game kept crashing. It was hard to get into a game with people and get it launched. So this is one that I played it for like an hour and a half, and I was like, oh, I see the potential here, but it is not here yet. And then I returned it.
Oh, you returned it.
I returned it because I think that whenever it comes out for real, I will reassess, because there is so much potential in that game, but I can't recommend it right now just because it's so rough around the edges and it crashed so many times, and the servers were, it was just all of that kind of stuff where it's like, okay, this is very early days, early access. Whereas some games come out and they're early access in quotation marks, but the game is basically done. This is not that kind of game.
And I'm looking at it on Steam right now as you were telling about it, and it looks, in terms of graphics and the way that the caves and all of it, it looks kind of like, what was the one that I can't even remember the name of it now. No Man's Sky. I was thinking about it and then I forgot. It looks like No Man's Sky. While you're exploring the caves and underground stuff. That's what this is reminiscent of, because I was thinking of a SteamWorld Dig kind of 2D game when you were talking about space dwarves, and for some reason it like the Lost Vikings and SteamWorld
No, it's
Dig,
a lot more like
it's
Left 4 Dead type of like co-op shooter is where we're at. It's just the mining is like your objective for the map. But yeah, it's much more in that Left 4 Dead vein of game than anything else.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, so I also played a new iOS game that was actually worth my time. I'm always kind of playing iOS games in the background, but I don't mention them because a lot of them are like, I play it and I'm like, this is not good. So I just never mention it. It's called Part-Time UFO, and I think it might be on Android too. It's on iOS for sure. It is a HAL Laboratories game. So this is basically like as close as you can get to a Nintendo game without being a Nintendo game, which is interesting. And you play a little UFO, and it's essentially a claw game, which in Japan they call UFO catcher games, which is where the name comes from.
I'm so good at those.
Are you? So
oh yeah, I can get like 2 things at one time. Like my friends in college at one point were like, "Hey, I bet you can't get us both a toy for this." I'm like, yeah,
so
please.
You should try this game because that's what it is. You are a little UFO and you get little mission objectives. So you have to like go and do work to make money. So like, one of the very first levels is like a bunch of oranges and orange crates spilled out of somebody's truck. So you have to go and pick them up with your claw and put them back on. And it starts very simple. And then over time, it gets more and more complicated. Like there was a level later on where you have to stack cheerleaders up and get them above a certain height. So you basically have to build a cheerleader pyramid tower, but you have this like UFO claw controls, which are not good. It's kind of, well, it's not that they're not good. It's just that it's that claw game mechanic where it feels like a claw game, right? You don't have perfect one-to-one. It's kind of like there's some in there. But that's what makes it fun. So it was worth mentioning just because, hey, it's a cool iOS game. If you're looking for a new mobile game, grab Part-Time UFO. Gets my recommendation easily. I played the Kirby Star Allies demo on Switch, and my daughter really liked it, so I'll get it for her because she loves Kirby. But it's a Kirby game. I mean, the new gimmick is that you can recruit the enemies, and you can have 3 of them with you, so you can have 4 people all together, like fighting things. So it's about allies, obviously. But beyond that, I don't know. It's a Kirby game. There's not much to say about it. I'm
really excited because I love Kirby games too. Like, not as much as she does, but I've been really waiting on this game. This was one of the only ones in the announcement that they did earlier this year where I was very excited. So I didn't know there was a demo out until now, so I'm so going to go download it and play it.
Yep. I did, so Fortnite, I did the PvE mode finally, which is called Save the World instead of Battle Royale. And there's a story there. There's a story about the storm. It feels like the gameplay feels kind of like Orcs Must Die in a way. It's better. It has guns instead of Orcs Must Die things. It has full base building instead of like being locked in little quarters like that game does. And there's a lot of good approaches instead of like Orcs Must Die. I always felt like there was one way to solve the puzzle and anything else was suboptimal. This feels like there's really a lot of approaches because there's a lot more freedom. And there's some cool things in it. Like you get a persistent base that lasts over time that you keep revisiting and you can keep adding on to and improving, so that's really cool. But in the end, it's basically a zombie horde mode of a game, and it's just, I don't know, it's kind of meh. Like, it's not great. I put money into it to get it early, which if you just wait, it's going to be free to play sometime this year. But I was enjoying Battle Royale so much that I threw them a little money because it's one of those things where I just wanted to support the developer. I was like, if I'm going to throw them a little money, I might as well see what this other mode is too. And you know, it's a mode that has loot boxes. You could tell there's a bunch of time and resources into this game. Like there's cutscenes, there's voice acting, there's like actual really good production values in there. But overall, it feels kind of messy. It feels kind of unfocused, like it doesn't know what it wants to be. And it's a lot of it's little bits of a lot of different things, and there's too many systems in a really bad way. And the loot boxes tie into that. Like, you can unlock weapons, but you can also unlock weapon blueprints, and you can also unlock trap blueprints, but you can also unlock people, and you can unlock, like, I don't know, there's so many, like, not conflicting systems, but interlocking systems, but in a way that feels messy, not interesting. Where, you know, if a system is complicated and interesting, I'm all about it. Yep. This one feels unfocused. So, I don't know. I guess in the end, I see why Battle Royale took off and this one didn't. And I wonder what will happen when they finally launch this, like when it's fully launched for free as like out of early access, because maybe they'll put this one out to pasture and then they'll focus all of their effort on Battle Royale, which at this point, that's what I want them to do because I like that mode a lot. The other thing to mention is this one is blatantly built for loot boxes. And I don't think I've mentioned that Battle Royale doesn't have loot boxes, which I think is fantastic. Like, I like that so much better. It's a nice change of pace. But anyway, all of that to say, I finally tried Save the World PvE in Fortnite and found it kind of lacking. So don't put your money into it, basically.
Yeah, and I mean, I didn't know. I thought it was free already because whenever I had Fortnite downloaded, I saw it on the menu and never even bothered clicking it. I only played Battle Royale. And it's funny because I like loot boxes in terms of like how Overwatch handles them as opposed to like Battlefront 2. And I really, really thought but that Fortnite BR...
Do you get the mini loot box for the day, or did you get the daily loot box, or did you get the login loot box, or did you get the one with the special currency that only lasts for this quarter, or do you have the one that's like a special reward that's a bonus loot? Like, there's 4 different kinds of loot boxes in this game for no apparent reason.
In the PvE version?
Yes.
Oh, good night. That is dumb because I like just one loot box that is pure cosmetic.
No, and this is, all of them are gameplay based. None of them are cosmetic. And it's just, they're all over the place.
That's why I don't like Battlefront 2s is because they're gameplay based. That I love being able to be like, oh, cool, I got this new awesome skin or this new spray or emote. Like I have finger guns on Tracer now. That's awesome. And I don't have to worry about upgrading my weapons and things like that you were talking about. So yeah, I can totally see how that's meh. And I was amazed that the Battle Royale didn't have loot boxes because part of it was that turned me off of it outside. I mean, I don't like Fortnite Battle Royale, but I wanted some sort of progression. And loot boxes at least would do that, where when you gain up, that's the reason I care about Overwatch stuff is like I gain a level, I get a loot box, and that's it. Like I don't care about anything else. Like, okay, cool. What skin do I get? Where in Battle Royale, it wasn't even getting that small dopamine hit.
And that's how I feel with the challenges that I talked about last week. Mm-hmm. Like last night, I beat a bunch of challenges. I unlocked levels and medals that got me a bunch of new tiers. So like I got a couple new cool cosmetic things. I got this new so you have trails behind you when you're skydiving at the beginning when you drop out of the bus. And I got an awesome new one that has like blue stars flying out of my hands and feet. I'm like, okay, sweet. Like, that's how I feel, that little dopamine hit of like, hey, I played a bunch, I did some challenges, and now I unlocked new cosmetic gear. It's there. It's just not loot box based. It's challenge based.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like, I can totally see that with that kind of stuff, yeah.
So I like that a lot. I played the Yakuza 6 demo, and demo here in air quotes, because they messed up when they released this game, and they released the full game instead of locking it off. So I didn't know this, but I sat down to play it, and I played like 3.5 hours of this game. I was somewhere into chapter 3 when I put it down for the night. And then I came back the next day and I found out that you were only supposed to be able to play halfway through chapter 1. And Sega just messed up with their demo. So when I came back to it the next day, my demo was on my like dashboard, but it was locked. And I was like, that's weird. So I looked it up and they were like, yep, they locked the demos because it's not actually a demo. The real demo will be out later. But because I played like 3.5 hours of this game, I actually kind of got invested in it, and now I'm interested. Whereas if they had cut me off partway through chapter 1, I would not have cared. Okay. So it actually worked in their favor for me, but I can see why they wouldn't want to give everyone full access to the full game.
Yeah. I mean, there's a difference in giving like a full access weekend as opposed to unlocking a game by accident, where if there's something persistent about it whenever they do, like there was the Doom weekend, I know, and then there's the like they do Overwatch weekends and MMO weekends, but I could totally see that the Yakuza games would not be a good just unlock this for everybody.
Well, and I want to talk about it because I bounced off of Yakuza 0, which everybody said was the best way to get onboarded into the series. And I played like half an hour of that game, and I was like skipping cutscenes because I didn't care and I was bored. And this time I just kind of took the game as it was because I was in a mood where I was like, whatever, I'm going to try this. A lot of people like it. It seems like there could be something here for me. So I kind of played it as intended. I watched every cutscene, and I didn't have the context of the previous 5 games in the series, or 6 games, because I guess 0 counts. And that almost made it better because I was trying to figure out what was going on as they were unveiling new things, and it felt like there was a lot of history there. And in the end, the first few hours, there's not a ton of gameplay, which ties back to our main topic, but it's more of like a tone piece to start a little bit, and then it gets into like a drama. It's like almost like a Korean drama where there's like a lot going on of interconnected personal relationships and stuff, to the point where I was like, oh, I see what they're doing. This is like a soap opera. This is not a traditional video game story. You need to go into this thinking, okay, I need to play this to establish the tone, and then I need to get into the personal relationships, and it's an interpersonal soap opera drama. And by the time I got to like hour 3, I was like, okay, I'm in this. This is weird, and it's really weird, but it's interesting weird. And then I got cut off from it. So what I ended up doing was I went and I pre-ordered the pack that gave me this game when it comes out sometime next month, and it also gives you a copy of Yakuza 0 for like $10. So I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna try 0 again from the beginning now that I actually understand what this series is kind of trying to get at. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah,
it does. And I mean, I played the first one when it was on like PS2 or Dreamcast or something like that. I don't remember which one it was. And I liked it well enough that back when it was a new series, I haven't played any of the newer ones that came out, but I really, really did like the first one.
I always thought it was some kind of like brawler, and I think that's what I was going in expecting when I tried 0. But I might just turn the difficulty all the way down and play it as an open world soap opera and just see what I think of it. So that's my plan. I haven't done that yet, but I will, and I will report back. The other game that I really wanted to talk about was Into the Breach, which, did you ever look it up after I mentioned it to you?
Yes, I did. It looks really cool.
So this is what I played the most this week. It's by the FTL guys. This is the same developer, and it's basically giant mech time-traveling turn-based strategy against bugs. That's the best way to summarize it, I suppose. So there's more persistence and unlocks than there were in FTL, which was one of the things I didn't like about that core loop. So this one, so you're defending the power grid, right? And every building is connected to the power grid, and every special like building is connected to the power grid. And every turn, bugs come up from the ground, and you don't have to defeat them. That's the thing. It's not a turn-based strategy where you have to wipe out the enemy. It's a turn-based strategy where you have to make it so the grid survives until the turns are up. Most maps are only like 6 turns or less. Some of them are like 4 turns or 3 turns. And a lot of it is about positioning. It feels a lot more like chess in some ways than it does a typical turn-based strategy, because you can have entire mech teams. You have 3 mechs on your team, but they're different teams. Some of the entire teams are about like pushing guys and moving guys and pulling guys and knocking them away. So it doesn't become about defeating them. It becomes about making it so they don't defeat your buildings, which is a really interesting dynamic. And
yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's fascinating because once you get your mind around it, like every party of 3 controls very differently. There's a couple that are more like straight up attack them, so you can treat it kind of like a traditional turn-based strategy. But there are a bunch that are like literally just push and pull and move. And you can do some things you can do where you can like knock them off an edge or knock them into the water that'll defeat them. That doesn't always work, but it's an option to add strategy. And one of the things that's like the core mechanic of this game is that they telegraph their attacks 1 turn ahead. So the enemy takes their turn and they move, and then they have targets, right? So it'll be like, okay, this flying guy is going to attack that building. This running guy came up and locked down one of my mechs with a web and is going to attack my mech. And so on your turn, you have an entire turn to react to whatever they're going to do. So that's why you can push them and pull them out of the way. So if you know you have an attack that can knock somebody 1 space and you hit the guy that's about to attack a building, you can just push him out of the way and then he'll attack an empty space next turn. Do you know what I mean? Or like your mech that's locked down in a web, you could use like a grappling hook to like pull him out of that web. You don't actually have to directly engage with the enemy as long as you can avoid them and move them out of the way so they don't do damage. So some of them are more straightforward and you're fighting, but some of them are like chess, with interesting chess pieces, and every group of 3 feels like a completely different puzzle that you're solving.
Right.
And I really like the loop of unlocking these different mech squads. So there's a random button if you want random mechs, but really the squads are kind of the core of the game. And when you go through and you play through with a squad, you unlock achievements or medals or whatever they call them, and you can go back and spend those to unlock more squads. And what happens is when your power grid finally does reach 0, your mechs abandon ship and they go back to the beginning of the timeline, and they basically say, I'm going to go to a different timeline, and you can carry one of your mech pilots between games. So there's a level of persistence there where you could like max somebody out and then bring them back into the next game and start with a max level pilot that has a bunch of special abilities. Yeah, I don't know. It's just, I like it a lot. I'm having a lot of fun with it. And I guess I recommend it to anybody who liked FTL or anybody who likes turn-based strategy, or probably anybody who likes mech combat either. I think all 3 of those are good recommendations. It's not that much money either. I think it's like $15. So
it's $14.99 on Steam. I'm likely to pick it up because after watching some videos of it, it looks like almost like Advance Wars, but as a roguelike kind of, yeah,
it's quick. I mean, the other thing is you can play through like, so there's islands, right? There's 4 islands. If you defend 2 islands, then anytime after that you can trigger the final battle. So I had a couple runs where I defeated 2 islands or defended 2 islands, and then I went on to the final battle, and the whole run took me like half an hour. So it's quick. That's the other thing, is that you can rapidly iterate through it. So like if you mess up, it's not a big deal because you can just start another run at it. But it does have a little bit of that roguelike, like, okay, this run didn't go well, let's try again. But with more persistence, which I like a lot. But yeah, I think you might like this. I don't know. I can't give it a rousing endorsement for you because I know you're kind of hit and miss with turn-based strategies sometimes.
Yeah.
But I would be very interested to see what you think of this one.
Yeah, and I absolutely do love turn-based strategy when it's done right. It was just stuff like Mario plus Rabbids just didn't hit it right for me. It didn't have that right feel. So when it's done right, it's absolutely one of my favorite genres in gaming.
Yeah, so I loved Into the Breach, and like I said, even though I talked about a lot of things I tried this week, Into the Breach was probably what took like 90% of my gaming time because I was just having so much fun of it.
Cool.
Yeah, I think that's it for this week. We'll be back next week. You can write to us with comments, suggestions, or feedback. Our email address is geek2geekcast@gmail.com, or reach us on Twitter @geek2geekcast. We have longer discussion threads on the subreddit at reddit.com/r/geek2geekcast.
And if you're not a Redditor, you can go find us on Slack as well. You can get an invite at slack.geek2geekcast.com. And we're also part of a podcast network, like we mentioned, so head over to geek2geekcast.com to see all of our shows.
I blog at agreenmushroom.com, and you can find me at grnmushroom. That's green mushroom without the E's on Twitter.
And I'm on Twitter as @Professor Beej. That's Beej with the 2 E's that I stole from him. And you can find me online at runningshoes.tv.
We've been Void and Beej with your Geek to Geek podcast. That'll do it for this week. See you next week, geeks.
Pew, 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 finger gun.
Comics. Hey everyone, Rob here, your friendly neighborhood comic geek, inviting you to join me and my rotating cast of co-hosts each week on The Comic Box, where we tell you everything you need to know to become a world-class comic book geek. So join us for The Comic Box each week right here on the Geek to Geek Podcast Network.
Hi everyone, I'm Katie.
And I'm Chelsea, and we are the hosts of Tea Time with Katie and Chelsea. We are two best friends who love pop culture and talking about pretty much whatever we want. Katie!
Yes?
Stop thinking about Zac Efron and tell our future listeners what some of our latest episodes have been about.
Well, we've talked about Zac Efron.
No, get it together, Katie.
Fine. We've talked about fan fiction, classical literature adaptations, favorite TV couples, and so much more. So grab your cup of tea or whatever your drink of choice is and download our podcast today.
Hi, my name is Joe Hogan, and I'm a geek. And if you're currently listening to this, there's a good chance you're a geek too. So check out my podcast, Geektitude. Each week, I talk with somebody about their geek aptitude. Sometimes I talk to people in a geeky profession. Sometimes it's someone doing something really cool with their geekiness. Often it's another geeky podcaster. But it's always someone who wants to share their inner geek. So join me each week as we come together to geek out about all the geeky stuff we love. And remember, this week, keep it geek.